All right, everybody, welcome to today's webinar. We'll be getting started in just a couple of moments. If you are just joining us, take a moment and use the question and answer box. Tell us your name, first name, and where you're from. You can do that inside of the webinar page just on the right side, or if you're watching via Google Hangouts, you can also do that in the question and answer box. So take a moment, tell us your first name and where you're from. We'll get started in just a moment. Just joining us, you are in the right place. We are going to have an awesome webinar training today on designing your perfect day, a 3-step blueprint. And we're going to get started here in just about 2 minutes. If you're just jumping in and joining us, go ahead right now. I'd love to hear your first name and where you're from. Do that in the chat box, and we'll get started here very soon. Okay, once again, welcome. If you're just jumping into the room, you're in the right place. We're going to have an awesome live training webinar. It's going to happen today on Accelerate, my 3-step blueprint to designing your perfect day. I'm excited to be sharing this with you. It's a one-time webinar, only time I've shared this, and it should be a great time in here today. So take a moment in the chat box, tell us your first name and where you're from, and we're going to get started here in just a few moments. Just seen several new people jumping into the room. So glad you guys are here today. We're going to have a great time in here, and it should be a fun talk about designing that perfect day. We are going to get started in just a minute. Go ahead and put in the chat box. Let me know your first name and where you're from. And I want to say hello to Eric and Kevin and Abby, Dave, Juan, Elizabeth, Joshua, another David, Lionel, Lois, Michelle. We've got Nancy, Ray, Skip, and many more that are entering the room even right now. So I'm going to make this time super valuable for you. I'm going to share with you over the process of the last couple years of the steps I've taken to try and make sure I get the most important things done each day. And so today is going to be a great time and conversation. There is just a conversation I want to have with you. I'm going to also open it up to some question and answer time in just a little bit. But I'm so glad that you are on the webinar with me today. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in and get started. Your time's valuable, and I appreciate you taking time out of your afternoon, depending on where you're watching from. I'm on the East Coast, so it's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I appreciate you taking some time out, so I want to make sure that you benefit from this time. If you've never been on one of my webinars, I'm very passionate about making sure you get action steps. This isn't a bunch of hype. This isn't a bunch of theory. These are steps that I have personally taken, that I've tweaked and used to design my perfect day. And when I fall off the wagon because I'm not perfect, I go back to these simple principles and it gets me back where I want to be. So I just want to say hello and let you know that you are in fact in the right place. And today the goal is for us to have a conversation. If you were sitting in my office or if we were having a cup of coffee and we were talking about some of the challenges, some of the struggles that you have with getting work done, because now more than ever we are bombarded by choices, we're bombarded by gadgets that people are texting us and people are leaving messages and we're getting email and people knocking on our door and we're getting more interruptions than ever before. And it's difficult, it's hard to carve out time to do the work that we feel led to do, that we feel passionate about. And so that's part of what today is about you gaining control back over your business, over the side hustle business that you're trying to do while you're still working that 9-to-5 job. Whatever it is, I want to help you and help you think through some ways for you to take back control over your workday, because it's very important that you don't just kind of slump into your workday half alert and half awake, because you will quickly slip into other people's agendas very quickly. And so we're going to talk about that today, and I'm going to share with you some tips and strategies that you can use as well. So I see many more people come on to the webinar. So glad that you guys are here with us, and many of you saying hello in the chat. We've got, again, Dave from Phoenix. We've got Tracy from Florida. JR from Indiana. He says, go Hoosiers. Well, JR, I was actually born in Indiana. I lived in Indiana. I graduated high school in Indiana and moved here once I went to college. So I am actually a Hoosier, very much so. We've got many more of you. Abby from New Hampshire, Nancy from Florida, Eric from California, Michelle from Chicago, Skip's in Fort Worth. Skip, I met you when I was in Dallas speaking at an event. I remember you. I'm so glad that you're here with us, and many more. So let's jump in and talk about this topic right here. Accelerate. That's what we want to do with our work. Maybe you're in a traditional job that you love, but there's other priorities that are pressing onto you. I'm going to help you to accelerate today. Maybe you're in a job that you don't love and you're doing this side hustle thing that you're really passionate about, and it's just hard to find time to do that thing because you've got so many other things going on between your family and working a job. Maybe you've got responsibilities at the church. You've got so many other things. You're the coach of the Little League team. How do you fit in this side hustle, this this thing that you're doing on the side that you want to turn into your dream job, your full-time job. We'll be talking about that a little bit today. Or maybe, in fact, you already are a solopreneur. You've created a business. You own your own business, but there's so many fires that you're putting out. You're not spending time working on the business like you need to. Well, we're going to tackle that today. First of all, some of you on the call this may be the first time you've been introduced to me. Maybe you saw an advertisement on this webinar on Twitter, or somebody recommended that you check out this webinar. Maybe you found it over on Google Plus, and you're not familiar with me at all. Well, you can find me in a couple places online. One's at jonathanmilligan.com. That's my personal blog. I talk a lot about productivity, time management. I talk about finding your gift. My background is in helping people in their careers. I used to be an executive search consultant, so I love talking about finding that work you love. So that's what most of the conversation is there. I also have a podcast on Jonathan Milligan called Simple Life Habits that helps you to work less, do more, and live with greater focus. You may also know me from Blogging Your Passion. I started that in 2011. And Blogging Your Passion is basically helping people to identify that thing that they're passionate about and help them earn money blogging about it. And we also have a podcast called Blogging Your Passion as well. And of course, there's some places that I've had the opportunity to be featured in, places like Lifehacker, Entrepreneur on Fire, Michael Hyatt, and so on and so forth. So that is a little bit about me. And as many more of you are joining the room, I see, I would love to answer some questions. So as you go through this, maybe you come in today, right now, with some questions about what is stopping you from doing your best work during the day. And you just need some tips or insights. If I have some, I'd be happy to share it with you. Would love to do so. So if you have questions, there is a question and answer box right on the right side. Go ahead and ask your questions. I'm going to kind of teach you my 3-step blueprint, and then I'm just going to hang around and answer some questions that maybe you come with today, or maybe you might have questions that come up in the middle of the presentation that you're not sure about. I'd be happy to talk to you about that as well. The webinar today is actually sponsored by the EverFocus System for Creatives. This is a time management system I have created. It's an online course that walks you through how to use Evernote to get more done. It's specifically designed for creatives. If you're in a creative profession, you say, well, what's a creative profession? And that would include authors, speakers, bloggers, entrepreneurs, pastors. This is a simple time management system that I set up for myself in Evernote, because if you're like me, you have lots of ideas, you never run out of ideas of things that you can do in your business, and you don't know where to focus. I have used this system to simply set it up in Evernote so that I can review it on a regular basis and work through the process. There's over 50 step-by-step videos in the members area, and it walks you through step-by-step how to set it up. So if you're someone who has Evernote, you've not really figured out a way to use it, this is not a tutorial on Evernote. It's about a system of setting up some specific notebooks that help you through planning and getting things done. I have a 90-day goal that I work through, 90-day goals, and it's my top 5 projects. And this walks you through step-by-step on that. You can check that out at jonathanmilligan.com/everfocus. Actually, today, as a thank you for being here, I'm going to give away a free access to the entire online course. So be sure, if you're on here, to stick around for that if you're able, because at the end, during the question and answer time, I'm going to randomly pick somebody who's here live, and I'm going to give you free access to the EverFocus system for creatives. All right. Okay, so it looks like somebody mentioned that they are having some time with a long buffering that's in progress. Those of you who are on the call, if you're, please tell me, let me know right now in the chat if you can hear me okay and if everything's coming across okay. It looks like somebody is having some trouble. It could be, sometimes it's your own internet connection, but I want to make sure it's not anything on my end. So those of you listening, if you could just let me know if everything's working okay, I would appreciate that. Looks like Dave said in the chat, I love reading Jonathan's stuff. Highly recommended. Thanks, Dave. I appreciate that. And it looks like we've got many more people coming in, and you're already asking your questions, which is great. I will get to those questions. And okay, awesome. So it looks like everything is good to go. We are going to keep rolling. All right, so I'm going to share with you 3 foundational steps that I would consider to be a blueprint, and these are things that you can go back to over and over and over again. So here's what I would consider to be step number 1 in the process. Step 1 is simply nail down your morning routine. Nail down your morning routine. This is incredibly important. I've gone so many different ways with this, and I've had to go back to nailing down my morning routine. That started my day off better than anything, and it's critically important. I used to tell myself, well, I'm not a morning person, or I wake up in the morning and it's like, I'll just be honest with you guys, that's like my least favorite time to exercise because I feel tight and feel sore. I just don't wake up, stretched out and ready to exercise, and so I would tell myself, I'll just do it later. I can do it in the evenings. But you know what? I found something very interesting, and this is your morning routine's more than just about exercise, but I'll just use this as an example. When I tell myself that I'm going to work out late in the evening, I have no buffer. Like, either I have to work out then or it's not going to happen. And here's what I've discovered. If I purposefully choose to do my exercise in the morning, even though it's not my favorite, and when I'm waking up, if for some reason I can't get to that in the morning, then I've got my buffer. My buffer is lunchtime. And if I can't get it to then, evening's my buffer. And so I rarely miss an exercise time if my intention is to start it off first thing in the morning. Hopefully that makes sense to you, because that's been true for me. And so what I've had to do, instead of just waking up and just jumping into exercising, I had to do a couple things. Number 1, I've had to think through how to get my 7 or 8 hours of sleep. If you want to accelerate your energy, your effort, and your time, I believe the most productive thing you can do is get rest. And we forget about that. We just think we can handle it. We think I can go to bed at 1 a.m., wake up at 6 a.m., and I may be tired, sure, but I can just get moving and I'll be fine. Everything will work out. I'll eventually kick it into gear. And we think that we can burn the candles at both ends, and it's just not true. In fact, right now, if you're struggling with energy, and if you're struggling with getting more done, I would say you need to sleep more. And I used to wrestle with this, I struggled with this, because when I first started really getting my business going, I just told myself, man, I'll just work every available time slot and I'll get more done. But here's what I've discovered. Hours sitting in the seat don't translate into being more productive. Let me say that again. Hours sitting in a seat, or hours, if you have a stand-up desk, hours standing at your desk in front of your computer does not translate into being more productive. Sometimes I've worked far less hours and been way more productive because I was intentional about it. And this nailing down your morning routine is so important. For me, it's the sharpening the saw time. If you've read 7 Habits of Highly Productive People, it talks about the importance of sharpening your saw. If you go into your day or into your week, if you don't ever take time for yourself, and I'm talking about the physical, spiritual, and mental, if you don't take time for that, you are walking into your work with a dull blade. In other words, it's going to take you twice as long to get things done. That's just, there's no way around it. And so for me, nailing down my morning routine, and that is, I'll just give you a sample of it. oftentimes one of the things I do when I wake up is you wake up dehydrated, and it's good for you to drink water. Sometimes it's good just to drink regular lukewarm water. Super cold water may not be something you enjoy first thing in the morning, but I wake up and I want to drink some water. That provides energy. It gives you some nourishment. It starts getting you to wake up. And then what I'll do is I'll actually go outside. Go out my back door, and I've got out in my backyard, I've got a lake, and I've got some woods area that's there, and I'll sit back there and I'll kind of just take in the morning. There's something awesome about being outside in the morning that just awakens you. You can hear the birds, they're getting going, and you got the ducks on the lake, and it's just, and honestly, I just sit there and I just kind of allow myself to wake up. I try not to do too much thinking. I just enjoy sitting there, and until I just kind of wake up, maybe 15 or 20 minutes. And then typically what I like to do personally when I talk about, the spiritual, is I like to read through the Bible. And I'll either do one of two things. One is I'll read the Bible on the scriptures on my iPhone app, or I'll listen to like a podcast, the daily audio Bible. Now for you, maybe it's journaling, thinking about journaling or doing something like that. And then I find that I'm pretty awake by that point, and then I'll go and I'll exercise. Now that can be in the neighborhood. I've got a room in my house that's got equipment that I'll go. And also what I'll do is I'll listen to something inspiring, and that's the mental part while I'm exercising. It might be an audiobook I'm currently listening to, might be a handful of podcasts that get me going, it gets me motivated. And so when I start my day, I have gone through the spiritual, the mental, and the physical. And I'm ready to get going. And honestly, you don't have to take 3 or 4 hours to do that. I mean, you can realistically get that done in an hour. If you have more time, great. But I found that when I'm religious about that, then things begin to work in my direction. There's an interesting study done by a university over in England, and they decided to really dive into this topic of habits. How long does it take to develop a habit? And for so long you've heard, 21 days, do something for 21 days and make it a habit. But what they found, and they studied, they had thousands of students participate in this study, and the average was 66 days. So you have to do something much longer than what we thought to really solidify and make it a habit. So I want to encourage you to nail down that morning routine. Maybe it is thinking things through, and I'll tell you this too, when you first start, set yourself up for success the night before. That's so very important. I can't tell you the times where I haven't, and it's been started my day off very frustrated. Where's my phone so I can listen to my podcast? I don't know where my shoes are. I can't find the outfit that I want to exercise in, or maybe I wanted to watch some TV or something in the exercise room, and the cable box isn't there, or the Apple TV because I want to watch something. I spend so much time just getting set up to exercise that I waste time, and that can be solved by thinking it through the night before. So that, my friend, will do more for you. It's done more for me than anything, and I want to encourage you to nail down that morning routine. And the way you nail it down is you got to stick with it 66 days. Now, does that mean if 25 days in you miss a day? I miss days. Don't beat yourself up over it. Just get back on the wagon. Jump back on the next day. Okay? It's fine. But I want you to think about that. Maybe you need to pick, what is that date 66 days from now, and say, even if I stumble, even if it's not perfect, even if it's not everything I want to be, I want to nail down my morning routine because I need to sharpen the saw. It's that, if you've ever been on an airplane, they always tell you to put your mask on first before you put your child's oxygen mask on, right? Because you're of no use if you don't take care of yourself first. And that's the idea here. If you want to be a big giver, if you want to be somebody who grows a business, if you want to impact lots of lives, it starts with you sharpening the saw and having the energy that you need. Okay, so that's step one. I see a bunch of questions coming in, and I will definitely get to those questions. Would love to answer many of these as I can. So if you're just joining us, go in there, ask the questions. I'll get to it in just a little bit. So let's move on to step number 2 in our blueprint. Step 2, and we're specifically talking about now, you've done this, the spiritual, mental, physical, you've done the sharpening the saw. Now we're jumping into our work day. I want these 4 words to dominate your thinking moving forward. Do creative work first. And I'm going to explain a little bit more detail what I mean by that. Some of you may see this and say, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. Some of you say, I'm not sure what that means. Well, I'm going to explain it to you. But you've got to do creative work first. You've got to put it in the morning. Now, creative work is going to look a little bit different for each and every one of us depending on the kind of work we do. But I guarantee if I were to have a conversation with you, I could pinpoint and find out what that creative work is. Now, you could rephrase this and call it proactive work. You know, what projects are on your list that you are responsible for, that you need to do. And the reason why this is so important to me, and actually this is something that I've been doing now for a while, but I didn't really have kind of a tagline with it to really describe what it was until I kind of put these words to paper: do creative work first. And the realization, let me just tell you a quick story, came out of earlier this summer, at the beginning, actually right after school got out, my whole family went to the beach at this condo, spent the week there. And I was so very intentional the week before about having my podcast, my blog post, everything done and scheduled so that when I went on vacation, all I had to worry about, well, not really worry about, but all that I wanted to do was to read and spend time with family. I took a couple books that I wanted to read, and I just wanted to spend time with family. I needed to unplug, and so I did. I totally unplugged. So fast forward, great week, had a great time. Monday morning, okay? If you are on this webinar and you say, I love the work I do, then when you come back from vacation, you can't wait to get started. And that's how I felt. I kind of jumped back in, and then I struggled. To be honest with you, I went 2 days just struggling to get motivated. I felt like I wasn't motivated to work. I was trying to pinpoint what the problem was. And here was the problem. I came back, and everything that was screaming at me was reactive work. Now, I'm going to talk about that in just a minute, but I want you to get this, okay? When you allow reactive work to start off your day, you are going to struggle. Other people's agendas become your agenda. Other people's emergencies become your emergency, because you are allowing that reactive work to take precedence. And that's the way it was for me. I came back and I had all these emails that I need to answer to, people that wanted to hear from me, appointments, and it dominated what I was doing. And I was jumping into my workday doing reactive work, and I wasn't getting to the heart of what I love to do, and that is to create content for people, to create podcasts that can help people, to create courses that can help people in lots of different areas. That's what I love to do. That's my creative work. And so for me, the way I have my time set up is in the mornings, I have at least 2 focus sessions. Focus sessions for me are, you know, a 90-day period, or sorry, a 90-minute period where I'm completely immersed into what I'm doing. I'm not jumping into my email. I am not dominated by social media and what's going on there. I will try to purely focus in on my creative work. So I consider creative work to be anything that's related to creating value in your business or in your employment, the projects you're doing, the things that you're working towards. For me, being a pro blogger, it has to do with text, audio, or video. That's like blog posts or books or podcasts or videos for products and courses. I want to make space for that, so I do my creative work first. If you're on this webinar today and you say, I want to be an author, or I have this book I want to write, do creative work first. And you are going to find incredible momentum when you do creative work, when you're the most alive, when you're the most alert, when you're the most enthusiastic. That's when you bring your best work. And you do that in the mornings. You know, I first began to value creative work in the mornings after I read a phenomenal book. I would encourage you to get it if you have not read it. It's called The One Thing by Gary Keller. And in the book, he likens our willpower to like the battery of a smartphone. Okay, so maybe you have a smartphone or you have an iPhone, and when you look at the battery, it usually starts with the letter green, right? And then it works its way down, and before you know it, and I know if you're like me, this has happened more times than I care to admit, I'll look at my iPhone and my battery indication's on red. That's a warning sign, right? Well, your willpower and your creativity has a green light in the morning. But by late afternoon, you're completely wiped out, and your battery indicator is on red. That's why doing creative work in the morning gives room for your best work. I can't emphasize this more. You know, when you jump into reactive work and you spend all your mornings doing reactive work, and then in the afternoons you decide to work on that project, because here's what happens. We often do the thing that's screaming the loudest, right? And we jump in, we have the intentions of working on that project that we want to do. But then it becomes, you know, other people's phone calls, other people's emails, and it pulls us away from doing that creative work first. So before I move on, and I see a bunch of questions, and I promise you I'm going to get to some of your questions in just a little bit. I just have a word for the side hustlers out there. You know, if you're on the webinar today and you say, you know, Jonathan, that's great. I like what you're saying. You know, that would be ideal, but I just don't have that kind of control over my schedule. You know, I work a full-time job, and I am doing my creative work, but it's on the side. Well, first of all, let me say I know how you feel. I've been there. I've definitely felt the same way. In fact, when I started my blog back in 2009, I was an executive search consultant, and that took up the primary part of my day. That was my main source of income. And at the same time, I really wanted to take my knowledge and my expertise, and I wanted to help more people. I wanted to create more streams of income than just placing someone into a job, into a position. And so I had a hard decision to make. You know, when am I going to find time to do this? You know, I've got a wife, I've got 2 kids, I've got church responsibilities on the weekends. You know, my kids like to play in sports, so I've been involved in them through playing soccer and basketball and Little League baseball. When am I going to do this? And what I had to do is I had to finally sit down and determine that if I really wanted to make a go of this, I had to work for myself first. That means before I gave time in my day to my employer, I was going to carve out time to work for myself first. And for me, that was the hours of between 5 and 7 a.m. And here's what's interesting. I told myself, you know, if you'll get to bed early and you'll do this 5 to 7 a.m. Now, this did create a little bit of problem with my morning routine. We talked about that earlier because, again, I was adjusting my schedule. So I actually worked out during lunch, and I had a place that I went to every day with an accountability partner, so that helped me to work out during lunch. But for a short period of time, I needed that. So my morning success routine was my early morning work sessions for that side hustle passion that of a blog I wanted to get off the ground. And so I had to determine that principle, work for yourself first, was going to become what I did. Because between the hours of 5 to 7 a.m., I've got the fewest interruptions. No one's trying to call me. Most of my family's still sleeping. It was my time to work on my blog. And for me, that carved out 10 hours a week. And then I had a few hours on Saturday mornings that I could work on it to help me move to the direction I wanted to go, which was what I'm doing now, which was to impact more people, to create income streams through my blogs and my podcast and the courses that I create. And if you say, I want to figure out a blueprint for doing that, I actually put together a worksheet called the Work for Yourself worksheet. And you can find that by going to bloggingyourpassion.com/teach. In the very first training video, I walk you through that worksheet. So again, if you're a side hustler and you're working on this thing on the side and you're trying to carve out hours, I actually have a step-by-step process that you can work through. You can get it for no charge. Just go to bloggingyourpassion.com/teach. So work for yourself first would be the answer that I would have for you. All right, let's jump into our final one, and then we're going to spend probably the last 15, 20, 30 minutes answering some of your questions and working some of this into your life. Okay, so again, just to recap, we talked about step 1 is nailing down that morning routine. Step 2 is being intentional about doing creative work first. Do the best you can to push that reactive work into the afternoons, which is step 3. Do reactive work second. Reactive work. Reactive work is the stuff that shows up in our email box. And I know what you're thinking right now, and I know the struggle of, well, I can't just completely ignore my email until the afternoon. No, but you can minimize it. You probably have been like I've been at times, obsessively checking emails. I mean, it's almost a high, an addiction. And I know what it's like because I used to be an executive recruiter, and like my lifeblood was on the email. And you may be at that place where that's a challenge for you, and I get that. I completely understand it. But at the best you can, everybody can minimize their amount of email. There's actually a lot of different, I used to be a part, can't remember the name right now, but I actually used to be a part of a simple program online, and maybe some of you in the chat, maybe you use it, you can remind me of the name of it. I can't think of it right now. But what I would do is I would tell, you sign up for it and you tell the system, you give them the email addresses of your most important people. Let's say they're your clients. And basically you tell the system to, if I get an email from one of these people, text me to alert me. And it would actually text and alert me on my phone, which then said, okay, I've actually got something to go check out. But again, that's not ideal. If the ideal thing is to push that reactive work into the afternoons. So what is reactive work? Well, as best you can, try to push meetings into the afternoon. Try to put appointments in the afternoon. Let people know, the morning times, or at least start off with part of your morning is time where you're working on that project. You're doing that thing that's going to push you and propel you forward. Brendan Burchard, if any of you follow him, he has a great way to explain email. He says, email is a nice, convenient What is reactive work? Well, it could be a combination of a few different things. It could be, reactive work could be a combination of, people you need to meet, phone calls you need to make, to-dos that have come to the forefront, business-related tasks, emails you need to catch up on. And that's the main reason why you should start your day I believe, in your email inbox. At least, at the very least, jump into your day and do at least one creative session. I mean, even if it's 30 minutes, okay? If you get into your work at 9 o'clock, then do 30 minutes at least of something that's going to push you and propel you forward. Or maybe you need to get to work earlier. You get to work earlier and work on that creative work. I know people who that's worked out for them is they've just decided to get into the office before the other people get into the office so they can do the things that help them move forward. Now, of course, that's going to be completely up to your situation, but maybe that's something that you need to do. The whole point of this, if you get this, you'll get what I'm saying. Don't give in to triggers that lead to reactive work first thing in the morning. Instead, establish triggers that lead you to do creative work. So those are the steps. You got number 1, nail down your morning routine. Number 2, do creative work first. And 3, do reactive work second. So what we're going to do now, and if you're joined us late, in just a little bit, in a couple minutes here, I'm going to answer a few questions, and then I'm going to give away free access to somebody on this call for a course. It's been a great selling course that I created a few months ago called the EverFocus System for Creatives. And if you want to check it out, you can get more details. You could even see the entire course outline by going to jonathanmilligan.com/everfocus. All right, so I'm going to jump in and take your questions. If you have questions, now's the time to get them in there. I'm going to go through and try to answer as many questions as I can. All right, here's a question. How do you handle more tasks? Let me see if I can get to it. How do you handle more tasks than time when they are all pressing and mission critical? Yeah, that definitely, no doubt, that's a challenge. I would say, why are they pressing? Are they pressing because there are other people who maybe you've agreed to too many things? Maybe, sometimes we can be so quick to say yes to things. And here's something I've learned that's been incredibly helpful for me is when I say yes to something new, I'm saying no to something else. Let me say that again because it's very important. Anytime you say yes to something new, you are saying no to something else. There's that opportunity cost. There's the trade-offs. In fact, a great book to check out is Essentialism by Greg McNown. If you haven't read that book will help you. And there's an entire chapter about how to say no gracefully. One of the things that has helped me is to say, hey, listen, I can do that for you. I'd love to do that for you, but I can't do that until next Thursday. Is that okay? And sometimes I don't hear back from them. And I've even heard back from them like 2 days later and said, hey, don't worry about it. I figured it out. Well, something that felt so important and, it came across in the email as, please help me, or you've got to do this. We've got to solve this. 2 days later turned into, oh, I just figured it out. So that would be my first thing is, what are the things that, are they really important to you? Are they important to where you're trying to go? Or is it the expectations of others? All right. Let's jump through a few more questions here. All right. We've got a question here. Do your work with different blueprints for different contexts? Why I ask is I'm often at workshops with customers, thus I travel a lot. I have quite a good blueprint for a day at the office, but it's different when I travel or work from home. I'm wondering whether I actually should have several blueprints for different situations, contexts, and places. To some degree, yeah. I mean, if you're doing workshops with customers and that's in the morning, I mean, partially I'd say that is your creative work if you're doing that sort of thing. The great thing about kind of the principles I shared today is it's all about how you define it. How do you define creative work? Creative work, being in front of a group and doing a workshop, that is giving your creative work. And getting clear on what that reactive work is really going to help you to say, okay, and listen, I struggle with this because I'm a person who I want to get back to people. I want to make sure that I give a good impression to people, and I want people to be like, I emailed you forever ago and you're not emailing me. That bothers me. But at the same time, I've had to tell myself I can get to that in the afternoon. The world's not going to fall apart between now and the afternoon in 99% of the cases. So I would say more or less keep the principles the same. It's just how you define creative work and reactive work. The bottom line is do the work that's going to move you forward, not the work that's just screaming at you. I'll give you a great example. A great example would be sometimes the creative work that we should be doing, it oftentimes isn't as easy as we want it to be. I don't want to paint, everything to be rosy and wonderful and you're always energized and excited about doing your creative work. Sometimes that stuff is hard. If you got a book to write, it's hard. Even if it's a topic you're passionate about, to write a book, to do whatever that creative work is for you, to prepare that speech, and even though you're excited about doing it, at the same time, it's not always easy. You're not always energized. And I often say sometimes the creative work feels like a level 2 on a scale of 1 to 10 when you're starting it. But here's what I've found. That stuff often feels like a level 10 after I've spent my morning doing it or after I've tackled it. I feel so good about my day that reactive work doesn't bother me as much in the afternoons. And reactive work is easier to do when my energy level's low, checking my email, answering people, having a meeting, returning phone calls. It doesn't, to me personally, that doesn't take as much, time, energy, effort, and creativity as it does to do the creative work. So hopefully that helps. Tracy says, I'm overwhelmed with all the technology, programs, and learning curve to become productive as a writer. How can I be productive without needing too many apps, programs, social media technology? This is so true. And Tracy, I'm a recovering app person. I've had to really simplify my process and the things that I do to really simplify this for me. I would say, Tracy, what's important is finding that tool and just sticking with it. Just decide, what, there's probably better tools, there's probably a lot more that I could be doing that can make it better, but you just need to jump in and just go ahead and dedicate to one thing and just live in that thing. Like I personally use Scrivener. I use Scrivener a lot for everything that I do with my writing, to writing books, to writing my blog posts, to scripting some of my notes for my podcast, to preparing a speech. It works for me, and I know that there are different things that I can be doing and using, but that's just what I decided I'm going to dive into. The other thing, Tracy, is we can use it as a procrastination if we're not careful. Because it's easy for us to get excited about new things and learning new things, and we don't balance our learning with our action. It's fun to learn new things, but then again, like I said before, sometimes that thing that we're real excited about, it's an 8, 9, or 10. After we spend too much time learning that tool, after about 2 or 3 hours, we feel like a level 2. When if we just buckled down and did the writing, even though it felt like a level 2 when we started, after we do that for 30, 60, 90 minutes, we're at a level 8, 9, or 10. So sometimes it's analyzing that from the front end. But I would say simplified all possible. Another example, Tracy, is Dan Miller, 48 Days to the Work You Love, New York Times bestselling author. What he does is he gets into a room. He literally has a room in his house that's no technology. I mean, the only technology is the computer, and that doesn't even have internet access. There's no phone. There's no cell phone. There's completely no interruptions, and it's like the technology-free zone for him, and he spends his entire morning just writing. There's no way he can possibly be interrupted. So, great question. All right, I'm going to take a couple more questions, then I'm going to offer someone on this webinar free access to the EverFocus System for Creatives course. And we'll do that in just a second here. Tommy says, besides Evernote, I'm really moving to Scrivener. I got some coaching at scrivenercoach.com. Big changes to be more productive. Yes, I love Scrivener Coach. He's a friend of mine, Joseph Michael. Good friend of mine. He's done a great job with that course. Dave says, what type of adjustments do you recommend for those with young children? 2 years and 6 months. Yeah, I've been there, Dave. And mornings can especially be difficult. You know, I actually wrote a blog post and did a podcast on that very topic about how to have stress-free school day mornings. So I'd encourage you to check that out. You can go over to jonathanmilligan.com, and well, actually, I'll just put it in the chat here. Let me just look it up. But this will give you some tips and strategies that I talked about that have helped me. I've got 2 kids at home. They're starting to get older, but I've definitely had challenges, of course, having kids with, you know, your morning routine and things like this. So anyone with kids, you may want to check out this blog post. I'm going to put it in the chat for you. And you can listen to it later, check it out. But I talk about, you know, the importance of preparing the night before, creating margin in your morning commute, things like that. So I will post that in there for you to check out. Okay. Let's move on to the next question here. All right. Lots of great feedback on the webinar. Thank you guys. I appreciate that. I'm glad that it's helpful for you. Okay. Just working through some of the comments. Heather says, I'm a single parent of 6 children, working, starting my own business, homeschooling. Well, first of all, Heather, you're awesome. I mean, you are Superwoman. Trying to juggle everything can be very difficult. Have to be very creative and persistent. I'm up at 5 a.m., but trying to get myself in a good morning routine, always tired and ready for bed in the evening. Well, first of all, I would say, Heather, there's nothing like being tired when you go to bed. That is a good thing. That's a wonderful thing. Some people never exert any amount of mental energy or physical energy, and they don't sleep well. So that is a great thing. I would definitely say, it sounds like you're getting up at 5 a.m. You know, I would just always look for when is the downtime. You know, it's hard, especially if, I don't know the ages of your children, but that can definitely be hard. But there could be times, downtime in the homeschooling. We homeschooled our kids for a few years, and there were times where they were in the middle of doing something that didn't require my wife's attention as much, so she could do other things. You definitely just got to look for pockets of focus time. And I'm not sure if you have a husband, but seeing when your husband can help and support you as well. Matt said, I went to bloggingyourpassion.com/teach. I don't see the free worksheet. You should, when you opt in, let me just double check here. If not, I will post the link where you can get to it. All right, here's the link in the chat. If you follow this link, you will have to opt in to actually get the worksheet. But the very first video I actually walk through. It's about a 20-minute video that walks you through the worksheet. And so that should help you. Dave says, I've stopped using an email client. I only check my email through a browser because it takes more work to open it. So by not having my client open, I'm not looking at it all day. Yeah, and definitely if you're using an email client, turn off the notifications. There's nothing that'll distract you more and take you away from doing your creative work than notifications. Turn that off. Don't allow that to distract you. Okay? Looks like sometime during the presentation, it looks like you guys may have lost me a little bit. And he said he wants to know that quote from Brendan Burchard. Email is a nice, convenient way to organize other people's agendas. And I know that's true. Tommy said she couldn't find the download there for the worksheet. I just posted that in the chat, and that should work for you. Lois said, this is so good, Jonathan. You answered my questions without even asking. Awesome. Yeah, Juan says, what do you do when you have a bad night? Yeah, you chalk it up. Give yourself permission. Like, sometimes I will do some type of a coaching call late at night from 9 to 10. I just finished up doing that. I took a group through, how to turn their blog into a business, and I did that for 8 Tuesday nights in a row, a small group coaching. And it started at 9, and it's supposed to only go to 10, and I always took it to 10:30. Well, honestly, and again, I know I have the luxury to do this, but I would not stress myself out the next morning. So I would still try to get my 8 hours in. And if I didn't sit down to do my work until 9 o'clock or even 10 o'clock, I wasn't going to stress out about that because I was working the night before. So sometimes if you have a bad night or you have something that's going on, just chalk it up. It's okay. Missing one morning is not going to destroy everything. But just get back onto it and just continue the next day. Todd said, do you have available an outline of your webinar today? I don't, Todd, but I can definitely put this into a PDF. I'm actually going to email out the replay. So that is something that I can definitely do for you guys. Dave says, when it comes to prioritizing a boss's mission-critical request, I'll ask, where does this fall on the priority schedule? I have these items which are currently high. Would you like for me to bump this up to the top? Where should I place it in the order? Dave, that's great. I love that. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And that's the kind of conversations you have. If you're in a traditional employment and you have a boss and he brings something to you, then that's how you do that. You show him, or her, here's what I'm working on, and this is what I'm trying to get done. Where do you think this needs to be in this scenario? That's a great another way to use that phrasing I said earlier, which is simply to say, I won't be able to get to it until this time. Is that okay with you? Or, I won't be able to get to that until next Wednesday. Would that be fine? And see what they say. So, yep, that's great. Lois said, would you repeat the name of the book you mentioned earlier? Lois, there's 2 books I mentioned. One is called The One Thing by Gary Keller. You can find these on Amazon. The second one is Essentialism by Greg McKeown. Great books. Todd said, can we have continued access to this webinar? Yep, I'm going to email out the link. Matt said, great quote I heard recently with regards to doing creative work. Are you building your dream or somebody else's dream? Yep, that's good. Todd says, what's the name of the tool that you just mentioned? I don't know exactly when. I think it looks like Matt may have answered that. It's Scrivener. JR says, what's your #1 productivity tip? Man, there's so many. Man, that's hard to choose. I would say right now, I think there's a saying by, let me just say this, there's a saying by Stephen Pressfield, and he says, how would you behave if you were the best in the world at what you do? If you let that drive you, it'll help you to go pro. How would you behave if you were the best in the world at what you do? And answering that question will make you more productive. All right, let me stop right here and let me do a random. I'm going to take everybody who's currently live here with me. I'm going to copy and paste your names over into we're going to make this sophisticated, a randomizer. Random.org has a really cool list randomizer, and you just copy and paste the names in. All right, I don't know if you can hear that, but it is storming away here in Florida in the afternoon. So if you hear some thunder and crazy thunder in the background, that's what's going on. So almost done here, just taking out some of these blank spaces. So if you're still on here, don't go yet. All right, at the very top of the list, I have Christopher. So I don't see, looking down through the list, all these names, I don't see any other Christophers, so because I only have a first name. So Christopher, if you are still on here, then all you need to do to get free access to this EverFocus system for creatives is to send me an email at jonathan@jonathanmilligan.com. I know it's kind of long. Jonathan's Jonathan, Jonathan@jonathanmilligan, that's MILLIGAN, jonathanmilligan.com. You do that, and I will get you free access to the course, and you can take it for yourself. So, okay, well, those of you who want to stick around, you're welcome to. We're going to have just a few minutes of after party of the webinar. We're going to answer some more questions. If you're the type of person you like to learn from some of these questions, or if you have a question that you've already presented, I'm going to try to get to your question. At the same time, if you need to go, we're at our 1 hour time frame, and I value your time. I will get out this replay if you want to listen to it again, or if you got on here late, I'm going to send that out to you tomorrow. So let me just look through and see what other questions we've got here. Okay. Mike said, really helpful tips. Thank you, Mike. Larissa said, was looking for back-to-school resources to make things smoother. Thank you. Perfect timing. Awesome. Juan said, thanks, that helps. JR said, nice. JR said, listen to you on Entrepreneur on Fire. Hope to hear you on there again. Thanks, JR. Appreciate that. Someone said, can you give out another one? Yeah, why not? Let's do the randomizer again. What do you say? So I'm going to give a second course out. The name that pops to the top is Enwongo. E-N-W-O-N-G-O. So you will get free access to the EverFocus system for creatives. And I'm going to do one more. I'm just going to do 3. Why not? So let's do one more. And at the top is Ray, R-A-Y-E. So Enwongo, Ray, and Christopher. Email me at jonathan@jonathanmilligan.com. I will set you up free access to the EverFocus System for Creatives course. Allotted. Yes, your name was on the list, but it showed up number 22. So sorry about that. Matt says, why don't I give out 7? You guys are continuing to push me, aren't you? All right. Lots of great comments. Thank you, guys. I think that's about it. So if you have no other questions, then thank you guys so much. I appreciate you spending some time. My goal is to release on a regular basis webinars like this that can help you, things that I'm learning I can pass along to you, where you can come and hang out. So be sure, if you're not signed up and on my list over at jonathanmilligan.com, make sure you get on that list so that you can find out about upcoming webinars. If you want to turn your passion into a business, come check out what we're doing at Blogging Your Passion. You just go to bloggingyourpassion.com. We've got a lot of tips, tools, resources there as well. So that is it. We are going to sign off. And again, I want to give you the replay and the notes to this. You can rewatch it, re-listen to it. And more than anything, start somewhere with what we talked about today. Maybe it's just for the next 66 days we're going to focus on our morning routine, one that works for you. Or maybe it is really working on that creative work first. Sitting down and identifying what is the most proactive work? What's the best work? What is that thing? Your creative work might be a spreadsheet because that's the type of work you do. But what is it that you bring your best work to in what you do? And focusing on making room for that in the mornings is going to help you immensely. And pushing that reactive work as much as you can into the afternoons. So with that, I'm going to sign off. Thank you guys again. Thank you for the great comments. And I'm so glad that you were able to join us for today. So with that, we're going to sign off. Thanks again.